Welcome back. During this video, I will cover the final 4 techniques in my 24 Techniques for Closing the Sale series. These techniques include the order sheet close, the relevant story close, the doorknob close, and the referral close. The order sheet close is first used when the presentation begins. The prospect comes to see you, or you go to see him or her, and the first thing you do is you pull out an order sheet and write the date on it. From then on, whenever the prospect says anything about the product or service, you write it on the order sheet. Now, the prospect may try to stop you by saying, well, wait a minute, don't write anything down. I'm not buying anything today. I'm just looking. And you reply, I understand, but I have a terrible memory for details, so I like to write everything down. And if you don't buy anything today, we'll just throw it away, okay? And you just keep writing on the order sheet. Eventually, the prospect gets used to seeing their information written on your sales contract. It becomes harder and harder not to buy when the sales conversation is over. Another way that you can use the order sheet close is to just pull out the order sheet and start filling it out at the end of the presentation. Assume the sale and begin completing the details. Now, the customer has to stop you from writing to stop the sale from proceeding. Then you say, could you give me the exact spelling of your last name for mailing purposes? If they give you the exact spelling of their last name, they've made the decision to buy. The next technique, the relevant story close, is a powerful closing technique because we make all of our decisions with the right brain. And the right brain is stimulated by stories and pictures. Whenever you can create a picture, as in the power of suggestion close that we talked about earlier, or when you can use visual sales aids, or whenever you can tell a story about your product or service, you can stimulate the prospect to buy. People will remember a story about a product or service for years, but they will forget all the technical details in 10 minutes. You can use a relevant story close when the prospect is having difficulty making a decision. You can use it in the middle of a presentation as well. You can tell a relevant story about another prospect who is hesitating about buying this product or service, and they finally decided to do it. And then explain how happy they are today that they bought it, especially if it costs a little bit more than the competition. The next technique is called the doorknob close. You use this close when you have almost lost the sale. You've made your presentation, you've given it your best shot, the prospect has resisted, the prospect still has that one major issue, that one major objection, and they're not telling you because they know if they tell you, you're going to answer it and make the sale. You've said everything you can think of. Is it the money that you're concerned about? How far apart are we? What do we have to do to make a deal today? But the prospect keeps saying, no, I'm not sure, I want to think it over. But he won't tell you what it is that's stopping him from buying. You know that he can afford it, and that he likes it, and he wants it, and so on. Finally, you say, Mr. Prospect, thank you very much for your time. I know how busy you are, and I appreciate your talking to me. I'll be on my way now. You close your briefcase, get to your feet, and go to the door. And as you get to the door, you put your hand on the doorknob. At this moment, the prospect begins immediately to think about what he is going to do as soon as you leave. His sales resistance drops. Then you turn around and say, oh, by the way, just before I go, I was wondering about something. I know that you're not going to buy anything today, but I wonder if you could just help me with my sales presentation. Could you tell me what was the real reason that you didn't buy today? Often the prospect will say, well, I'll tell you, the real reason was this. At that point, you take your hand off the doorknob and you go back in and sit down. You open your briefcase and you say, Mr. Prospect, I'm so glad you told me that. That's my fault. Obviously, I didn't explain that part of our offering to you. May I go over that point just one more time? Now you have the key reason for not buying, and if you can answer it effectively, you can close 50% or more of these lost sales. The last closing technique in this series is called the referral close. And the basic rule is this. You should never leave a prospect or a purchaser without at least 2 referrals to other interested parties. When you finish speaking to a prospect or a client, whether he buys or not, there are a variety of ways to get referrals. For example, you can say, Mr. Prospect, I know that you're not in a position to make a decision today, but could you give me the names of 2 or 3 other people who you think may be able to take advantage of this offer? Now, this is a form of the alternative close. Give him a choice between 2 or 3 referrals. The prospect will almost always pick 2 because it's easier. He will say, well, yes, I can give you a couple of names, and he'll give you the names. The prospect will always give you the first names that pop into his mind, people that he knows the best. These will be the names of people that he's very familiar with, people that he works with or associates with. You then say, Mr. Prospect, would you happen to have their phone numbers handy? They will usually have the phone numbers nearby. Now you've closed on the phone numbers. Then you ask, which of these prospects should I call first? You are using another alternative close. And he will probably say, well, call Bill first. Now he has answered affirmatively to 4 questions in a row. You then ask, Mr. Prospect, would you call Bill right now and tell him that I'm coming over? By this time, the prospect will say, well, sure. He will pick up the phone, call Bill, and then send you over to see Bill or whoever it happens to be. The reason why a referral is so much more powerful than a cold call is that with a referral, you have all the credibility of the person who is referring you. With a cold call, you go in with no credibility at all. And credibility, the amount that the prospect believes you, is the critical factor in buying. You need 100% credibility before the prospect will buy from you. If you get a referral, you start off with 90% credibility going in. If somebody that you know and respect sends somebody to see you, you'll give that person the same treatment, the same courtesy that you would give to your friend. So always ask for referrals and never leave a presentation, if you possibly can, without at least 2 referrals. Here's another idea with regard to referrals. Go back to all of your previous customers. Call them up and ask them how they're doing. Are they happy with what they bought? Do they have any problems or questions? Is there anything that you can do for them? And if possible, go and call on them personally. I have a friend who's an excellent salesperson. Every January, right after the holidays, he goes and calls on every single customer he's got. He spends 2 or 3 weeks calling back on the people who have already bought from him. After making sure that they don't have any problems, making sure that they're happy, he gets 2 or 3 referrals from each person. It takes him 6 months to work through those referrals. He makes half his sales for the year without any cold calling at all. Any person who's been in selling for more than 90 days should be working off of referrals almost 100% of the time. Referrals that people give you or referrals that come to you as a result of good things that you've done in the marketplace are worth their weight in gold. Now, the 24 techniques that I've shared with you in this series are the best closing techniques of all time. They are vital sales tools, and they have to be mastered through study and practice. Remember, the more tools you have in your sales toolbox, the more likely it is that you are going to make lots of sales. For some fields of selling, you'll only need 2 or 3 closing techniques, and you'll use these all the time. But the more closing techniques that you know, the more competent you will become at closing. And here's a final piece of advice that's helped me dramatically when I started my career, and it's simply this. Use throwaway presentations to develop your sales closing skills. Whenever you get into a presentation with a person who you know is not going to buy, and you know you have nothing to lose, throw the whole book at them. Try out every closing technique and every qualifying technique and every objection answering technique that you can think of. You only really learn sales techniques by using them face to face with a live prospect. When you meet a person who's not going to buy, develop your skills by using them all with that person. In these throwaway presentations where you just sit in there and work away until you literally get thrown out, you will learn more and faster about how to close good prospects than in any other way. The key to sales success is to act boldly and to close boldly. In other words, ask for the order boldly and with complete confidence. Ask it like you confidently expect the other person to buy. Ask as though it were impossible to fail. Ask the closing question like it is inconceivable to you that the person could say anything but yes. And practice your voice. Practice your tone. Make sure that you look like $1 million. Make sure that your voice is strong and bold and clear when you ask. Speak strongly. Ask as though you expect the person to say yes. To be a great sales closer, you also must be enthusiastic. You must love your product. You must believe in your product. You must have confident expectations, and you must persist. Persistence is to the character of man and woman as carbon is to steel. If you will persist, if you will keep on keeping on, no matter how many times people tell you no, you must and will eventually succeed. No matter how many doors you knock on, no matter how many times you get turned down, if you will keep persisting and persisting and persisting, you will succeed and you will become one of the great salespeople of your generation.